second one is that I don't drink alcohol, so you can't offer me a beer. I'm sorry, you'll have to settle with a Coke. And last one is that I always forget my hat, except today. I finally found it. It was in my home, actually. I thought I lost it, but yeah, I have it. So I'll try next time to bring it with me, because it's really the one thing the people ask the most. And I'm really not lying. So far, I started Cowboy about 2 years ago. Why? Mainly because I liked many of the existing solutions. I liked Web Machine a lot, but then you can't do WebSocket with Web Machine easily, at least. I liked Middleware because it's very easy to use. I liked also some things inside MultiWeb, inside yours. So I couldn't choose. And since I couldn't choose, I just wrote one that brought everything that I liked inside a single project. And of course, I wanted to use also binaries. Binaries are really the main trigger that made me start Cowboy. So we started, 2 years and 1 or 2 weeks ago. And initially, we wanted binaries. We wanted dynamic listeners. I saw this in a Web Machine. I think you can create as many listeners as you want dynamically. So for example, your application could create a listener for a specific administration interface only when you need it. And I think that's pretty cool. Also, we, of course, optimize for low latency, but Erlang pretty much does all the work here. And memory, but binaries pretty much do all the work here too. We have one process per connection, mainly because it saves memory. And the code base should be small and the code clean. So no parameterized modules, which are gone now, so that's good. And initially, the community was pretty encouraging. We had some hardcore IRC guys who jumped directly on the bandwagon, and then it just started growing. I'm very thankful to the very initial group of users because they helped make Cowboy what it is now. And then I talked for the first time at the EUC 2 years ago. Middleware was also a big help, not because of the project, but because Roberto decided to stop Middleware in favor of Cowboy. We discussed a few times before then about both projects, how they have views that pretty much match, and how it's a waste to have 2 separate projects for everything. So he decided, and I'm very both thankful and a bit sorry that Cowboy should prevail. So if you go to Rackspace tonight, I think he will be there, so you can go talk to him and thank him for that, because that was very generous of him. So then, more recently, I wanted to start working on a more stable version. So I had to condense all the changes I wanted for the first stable version in a very short time span. So that's why you had to do all these changes to upgrade the code. But first, I actually didn't do much at all, because I had to really think about this, because once it's stable, you generally don't want to modify it. The code has to be future-proof. So I've done all this, but a few very small things remain. We will see them afterward. So what's new? Cowboy has a mascot, which is not a cowboy, but a cowgirl. the reason is that I like girls, not boys. So yeah, sorry about that. We have new goals now. Cowboy was really trying to have a very small code base. It's not that small anymore, but the core code base is still the same. It doesn't grow. We just have a big module for parsing HTTP headers and everything associated with HTTP. And this is mostly it. We want to be able to we want people to avoid to parse themselves the HTTP headers. So we will have to, Cowboy will include parsing for every single HTTP header available. And we, of course, want support for what I call the modern web. So that's speedy, WebSocket, long polling, and so on. A new goal is to have a good documentation. So that's new. We didn't have any documentation before. People complained about it almost on a daily basis. And now we do. And it's actually pretty cool, I think. Here. So this is just the introduction, and we have on the right many, many different chapters. And of course, we want the code to be stable, to be future-proof. And the last goal, which I haven't really started to work on yet, is to target non-Erlang developers. So for example, I want PHP developers to be able to use Cowboy to serve their applications, or Ruby developers, or Python developers. I want to expand the number of users that can use Cowboy. And perhaps this would allow many people to try Erlang, because if they can simply add a handler written in Erlang on top of their application, that would be a lot simpler solution than anything that exists now. So we have new conventions. In Cowboy, everything is a binary now. We used to have atoms as for certain header names and for some methods. This is mostly because Cowboy used to use the Erlang decode packet function, which does kind of a mismatch. It has a few defined header names, which are atoms, and the other ones are binaries. So it's not very good. We want something clear. So it's all now binary. And it's also, everything is lowercase if it's case and sensitive. So I got a few complaints about this. Some people think that you really want to have the camel case for the header names. That's not, well, the standard doesn't say that. And moreover, as we will see, Speedy actually asks to have lowercase header names. So we are compatible with Speedy already on this point. And then I renamed a few modules simply because it's annoying to type Cowboy, HTTP, something. We improved HTTP itself. We have better support for HTTP 1.1 and 1.0. I'm not interested much in 1.0 because it's bound to disappear eventually, especially with Speedy coming. But yeah, we do improve as much as we can, mainly on existing implementation. Cowboy now has built-in response compression. So if you just set an option compress to through, Cowboy will compress everything you send to the browsers. We have built-in parsing of HTTP headers, as I said. The request body streaming code is very fast now. It used to just read whatever is on the socket every time you asked to stream, for a stream chunk. Now it tries to read as much as possible before giving you the data. So it will have a much better speed there. And we also improved long polling, we detect when it closes. I have changed a lot of things. This is the biggest part of the changes, I think. We have 4 types of functions in Cowboy Rec. We have functions that access the rec to extract a value. These return the first one, value rec. So we'll return the rec simply because often we have something that will be cached. And you should really use this rec. You shouldn't assume that nothing happened. Even if you know the code, it might change in the future. For actions, we generally do something like send a reply, so we have a result, OK or not OK. Modification, we simply return the rec. So for example, you set a response body. And questions, for example, has body. We return a Boolean. We improved WebSocket. So WebSocket now is completely compatible with the standard. We handle everything. We use the Autobahn test suite, which is a huge test suite used to test both servers and clients. And we pass all the tests. There's a few shadowy areas in the standard that we may or may not handle properly, but everything that is clearly defined is properly handled. And the code is also much faster now, also thanks to the Autobahn test suite, because they have some tests for performance, and these tests will take a lot of time if you don't optimize. And we went from about 100 seconds to 7 seconds on some of the tests. So this is a pretty good improvement. We also, I did not mention it in the slides, but we also fail much earlier if there is some data that is incorrect. And finally, the text frames, which are by the standard required to be UTF-8, are now properly checked. So checking this makes actually the code a bit slower, but we can't really be fully compatible if we don't do it. So if you need speed, you should use binary frames instead. So REST, which actually comes almost entirely from a web machine. We used the web machine diagram, and we implemented it. And many users went to Cowboy after that, simply because they want to use, of course, REST and WebSocket at the same time. And we have a pretty similar implementation, but we are in the process of changing a few things in the diagram itself. So it was quite compatible before. It will be less and less until we are sure that the API is what we want. One thing we added is the patch method support. So web machine does post and put. We added patch, which is pretty much the same thing as put, except the data you send is just a fragment of the whole resource. And it's still experimental. So like I said, we still have a few changes to make here. You can use it, but it's at your own risk. And of course, people do use it. Many people use REST. We have more powerful routing. So before we had list of segments, and that was a bit annoying to write. So I went with a nice syntax. I don't have examples here, sorry. The syntax allows you to simply write a string with the kind of URL you want, the bindings you want. You can have optional segments. And you can also apply constraints. Constraints, for example, would allow you to take a bound value and make sure it's an integer. So this allows you to differentiate between these two. API 42 and API blue can be routed to two different handlers. And you can also write your own constraints. You can apply anything on it if you want. We have middlewares. So this was a feature that was requested a long time ago. I wasn't sure exactly whether I wanted it or not until recently when I talked with Garrett late last year. Middlewares are simply pluggable, a pluggable process kind of thing. You plug a module in the middle of the Cowboy execution, and that's about it. By default, the middlewares enabled are the routing that we saw just before and the handling of the requests themselves. You can add anything, you can replace them. If you don't like this routing, you can just discard it. One comment is that this isn't WSGI. This is completely different. They actually just pass the request to all the middlewares, and then there's a response that is generated that is passed back to all the middlewares. And this takes just a lot of time to send the response to the browser. And I don't want that. I want to be able to send the response directly. So instead, I have a list of middleware, and we just go the one way. We don't do the way back. We just pass the request until we have a response, until it stops, or until there's a crash. There's something wrong happening. So it's a bit different. I think it can fit a lot of uses, and if you really need to do something on the response, you have a hook for this. And yeah, we do have documentation now. So it's not perfect. I'm not very good at writing. I'm trying my best, but I can do only so much at a time before I get frustrated. So please send feedback. Please send patches if you have anything to say about it. It would be much appreciated. So Cowboy has always focused on performance, and this has had great results recently. And I'm not sure how to benchmark Cowboy properly. This is a problem I've solved for a very long time, and I still don't have a solution because there's two things to consider. First, Cowboy generally can handle more requests than you can generate on classical benchmark clients like AB or Fcgi. And the other thing is that most of the things you want to, most of the values you want to extract from benchmark actually come from systems under load, systems that do many other things than just reply something. And that's very difficult to do when you don't have the actual system in place. So instead, I ask people to give me results. So these are from Fred, from their AdGear application. And what we can see here is there are 6 servers. 4 of them run the Cowboy 03 version, and 2 of them run the Cowboy yeah, it's 07 or 08, but really recent Cowboy. And these are the 03 here, 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 and here. And the others, especially the brown one, are Cowboy 07. So the brown one is very much bigger than everything else. It can handle maybe 2 times more requests than everything else. And that's very interesting because that means that we managed to find a way to improve Cowboy that actually can't be detected in any kind of benchmark. So I will explain why this happens. And yeah, these two are the same kind of servers. They are big servers, and these 4 are smaller servers. So that's why you don't see such a big increase here. This one just takes everything. So yeah, I'm forced to test in production in user system. I really wish there was a way to do otherwise. So if you have any performance needs, any graph, please send them to me. I really can use them. I'm also hoping that the Farwest project will bring results because they are, of course, focused on building testing tools to measure the correctness of the project, but they are also interested in benchmarking. So perhaps something will come out of it. And that's pretty much the reason why the new Cowboy is able to handle many, many more requests. NIF, well, Cowboy never used NIF, really. It did at some point for perhaps 2 or 3 months. But BIF are the same as NIF. They can also hurt the scalability of your system. And it can be surprising because they are conceived to be able to give back control to the scheduler, but they are not necessarily tested for your own kind of application. They are doing their best, but sometimes this isn't enough. So for some operations, like the ones we have in a web server, if we remove the BIF, we actually get much more performance out of it. So these are the kinds of BIF that can be hurtful, especially the first one. So when we actually stopped using the code packet because we wanted consistency, we ended up having a lot more performance in our project. So this was a happy side effect, but I'm glad this happened. And binary match is a much smaller scale, but it also has some effect. List length, I'm sure you know that if the list is huge, it will take a lot of time to calculate the length. So there's no real formula to this. You have to measure your system. Perhaps the changes I've made in Cowboy are worse for you. I'm not sure what you run. But on real hardware, at least, we have a pretty good improvement. And never assume something is faster. Don't use NIF because it's C code, because C code is fast. It does work if you have one thread, but it doesn't work if you have many, many processes. And of course, optimize the critical code pace, the part of your project that has everything going through. So as you can see, Cowboy is actively developed. I mentioned this because I occasionally have some questions about the status of Cowboy. Cowboy is our main product. It's really what we focus on. And we do have other projects around, but it's Cowboy that is the most important. And we are planning to use it in a future SaaS solution. I can't say more about this. Cowboy is popular, so this is GitHub, most Erlang, most watched and most forked Erlang projects. So I look there from time to time, and this is always what I see. Well, not exactly all the time. I'm sure React CS this month will win by far the most starred. But this is very, very encouraging. This gives me a lot of confidence in what I'm doing. And you might wonder why Cowboy became so popular. I do myself. And I think it's mostly the community. For example, if you go on Twitter and you see, oh, now live, the new Cowboy. OK, retweet. And that helps a lot, because people then know about the project. And they know it's still working, and it's still being improved. So please continue supporting the project. We have many contributors. I want to thank them. Some of them are in the room. We have had more than 50. It's enormous. I'm so happy about it. We have almost 500 tickets, so that means we had a lot of bugs, of course, but they are getting fixed, and that's what matters. And we have many, many companies using Cowboy to make things. And I really like hearing where Cowboy is used. I don't really care if you use it to power some kind of API or some sub-service. I want to know, does it help save the world? And in some case, I'm sure it does. So please tell me if it does. So these guys use it. You have Heroku. The whole Erlang team is here. You have Lindell Lab, which is the guys behind Second Life. They are using it for a game. You have Bloom. It was the previous company Fred was in. You have Kazoo. The talk was just before. And it's also used in financial, in mobile applications, real-time web, and so on and so on. We also have, actually, we have a few sports-related uses. I can't talk about them because I didn't get explicit permission, but we have many things going on. And most of the time, they are projects that need real-time, so they use Erlang, of course. They need some kind of HTTP access, so they use Cowboy, and they also use WebSocket. These are the 3 key points of why people are using Cowboy. And if you are using it for some game project, game-related project, then you have a high five. And you are using it, and that's great. And also, many open source projects are using it. You can use Cowboy with Nitrogen, Chicago Boss, Axiom. Actually, Evan Miller told me he wants to switch to Cowboy by default, so that's very, very nice. Is he in the room? No? OK. We have many open source users. RabbitMQ use it. It's a plugin, but that's still cool. LeoFS, I'll talk about it a little more. Project FIFO, which is some kind of, no, I really don't understand. I'm sorry. You have an IRC chat. FilePlanes is a cool application where you can share files using WebSockets without storing the file on any server. And you have Bigwig, which is an old one, and I hope someone will one day take it and make it better, because it could be very cool to have a kind of web-based observer application. And I added recently a section in the Cowboy guide for people to list the projects that use Cowboy or that complement Cowboy. So please send a pull request, add your project. It will help people find examples or find tools to use with Cowboy. So Cowboy was initially doing what Ranch is doing, which is accepting connections. It was spin off in a separate project. It was always meant to be a separate project, and was spin off because many people wanted to use it and didn't want to use the Cowboy code itself, the HTTP code. Specifically Basho, for many reasons. Ranch listens, accepts connections, supervise the processes. It does everything for you. It's a real pleasure to use. And you can, of course, embed it if you need to. Bullet is actually getting quite popular. It's pretty much WebSocket for all browsers, even the ones that don't support it. And it's also permanent connections. It will reconnect if something disconnected it. Farwest. So I've been here last year to talk about Farwest, and it was just an idea at the time. And since then, it has been used actually by a group of people who are building a game database project. So these guys have absolutely no programming background, and they are still using it with very few interventions from me to build this kind of project. So I'll do a short demo afterwards. Farwest is mostly about giving this kind of users complete autonomy to do what they need to do. It's not so much for Erlang people. It will provide libs, for example, for authentication, sessions, but it's not the key point of Farwest. So I actually just released version 2.0.2 here. You can find it on my GitHub. And this is, this is the Farwest UI. So of course you need an UI because these people don't know command line or anything. And the UI so far gives you access to the roots. You can change them dynamically. You can edit templates. They actually made quite complex templates. You can, so it looks a bit like a wiki because these templates will be versioned. But these templates do not contain any data. They are just the template itself. And then you have the user data, which is also versioned. And yeah, I probably have one that has more data. And these are just JSON. And people actually do understand how to edit a JSON, how to make some JSON. So it's OK for now, at least. Perhaps we will have a better interface later. And we can, of course, upload files. So for Farwest, there's a lot of UI work to be done. So I'm hoping to get interest. So the Bounty Source guys went to me and asked if I wanted to do some kind of Kickstarter. And I said, yes, sure, let's try with Farwest. Because I really don't know how to make UIs. I really need to pay someone to do it. So if Farwest becomes successful one day, it will be because someone will have done the UI work. So if you are interested, just look, give what you want, and I'll be thankful. And last is LeoFS, which had a talk yesterday. It's pretty much just Amazon S3 open source on your servers. It uses Cowboy in the gateway part of the application. So Cowboy must receive a lot of data. And that's why I asked them to be able to work on the project, to be able to optimize Cowboy for these kind of situations. Cowboy was optimized for latency. We need to optimize it for throughput also. So this is what I'm doing mostly at the moment. In the future, we still have a few things to break. So we will improve REST. We need to fix the post handling. In Web Machine, if you have a post request and the resource must not be created, it goes to the process post function. And this function simply don't care about the content type of your data. And that's quite bad. Everything else cares about it, and then you have this function that is odd. So we want to fix this and make it like everything else. I will add, these are actually not breaking anything, but I will add more options to read the request body. We need to be able to decide the size of the chunks, the timeouts, and so on. And I will probably remove Cowboy rec peer add, which is mostly used if you have a proxy somewhere and you want to find the real IP address, except the headers used by the proxies differ depending on which proxy you use. So this function isn't perfect. I'm not sure I can do a perfect function, so I'm just removing it. And I will add support for parsing these headers instead. We have a lot of work to be done in Ranch, actually, but it's mostly for Cowboy use. We have this setting called max connections. It allows you to have a maximum number of concurrent connections, mostly to avoid overloading the CPU. So to do this, today we have a Gen server that monitors all these connections and maintains this counter. This isn't very good because it duplicates the work of the supervisor, which already knows when processes stop. So I want to make a custom supervisor to do both supervising and max connections handling in the same place. And doing this will also allow me to optimize a few other things. I'll be able to simply have the protocol options and transport options directly inside the supervisor, so I don't have to copy it 2 times to create a new connection process. Speedy. Speedy is very interesting. Speedy is this new HTTP thing that uses binary, that is meant to have one single connection for all the requests the browser is going to make. It's asynchronous. It compresses everything, so it sounds perfect. And it's actually quite good, surprisingly. It has the headers are lowercase, like I said earlier, and that's very, very smart. And in Cowboy, we will be able to have speedy connections work directly on the same code as HTTP requests. So we are going to do this by having one process for the connection, and then we spawn many different processes for each request. And they will be, of course, thanks to Erlang, executed asynchronously. So some things in Speedy we won't be able to do. Speedy has this priority number for requests that determines which request should be handled first, but Erlang doesn't support this. We, of course, want to support HTTP fully. We want to support everything that is standardized around HTTP, except perhaps things like WebDAV, which would be better in a separate project. But we want to be able to enable people to build anything they want on top of Cowboy's HTTP code. And of course, we do continue as soon as implementations arise to add the new standards. So the first version is going to be everything I've been talking about here, plus, of course, the stable API. We really want this. Actually, Joe came to me a few days ago, 2 weeks ago perhaps, and said, you have to stop breaking the code. And there's a big reason for this, but I'll talk about it afterwards. So I'm going to make the best effort I can to stop breaking your code. I don't promise anything, but I will try. And of course, we also want Cowboy to be fully documented. So it will probably actually take a lot of time between the last few important changes in Cowboy and the version 1.0 release, because I want to spend time to document everything, make sure people understand, and then be able to, once this version is released, start working on the next thing. So how can you get help? You have the IRC channel on Freenode, 9.9s. You can also ask on Erlang, but I think with the amount of people who are asking Cowboy questions on Erlang or the Erlang mailing list, I think we are annoying a few people in the community who don't care about this. So it's probably better to focus your questions in 9.9 channel or the mailing list on that you can find on our website. You can ask me for consulting. I actually did some earlier this week. I can come where you are, look at your application, and tell you what's wrong, how to improve it, and so on. So I'm mostly interested in consulting and things that will allow me to improve Cowboy in the end, like optimizations. And I can also do some specific developments if you need, but I prefer if they are open source later. So you can, if you need something, you can talk to me anytime. You can help with Cowboy. Yeah, give me feedback. Give me feedback. Give me feedback. That's it. You can also, of course, send patches. You have a guide for this in the repository. If you are a company, you can ask me for sponsoring. I, of course, will consider it. And then you can help with the future Cowboy book. So I want to talk with a few people, I see two, about the Cowboy book, because I want something that is huge. I want this kind of book. Not because I like writing, I really don't, but because we need a book that is good both for beginners and for people who are going to build tomorrow's biggest web applications. I want something that can be read by people who don't use Erlang, who don't know Erlang yet. This is important, I think, because Cowboy, and mostly thanks to Erlang, Cowboy change the rules of the game. We have many processes, we have many connections, and it's simply not the same as developing a RISE app. So I want to be able to enlighten people about this. I want as many people to know they can also do it this way. So we will have, of course, a few introductory chapters about Erlang, perhaps just one. Erlang is very simple. It's a very small language. And then we move on explaining Cowboy, and then we move on explaining how to build real-world applications. And I want to go pretty far. I want to go as far as distributed Erlang applications that use Cowboy for serving the application itself. So if you want to help, after the talk, come to me. I'm sure you can. We will probably publish it online, like Fred did with Learn New Erlang. I think it worked very, very well for him, so we want to do the same. And I also already have some interest to publish it on hard copy. And one more thing, Cowboy will have some part of the Programming Erlang second edition. Joe likes Cowboy, so you should like it too. But he doesn't like reading the source code, so he always bugs me about the lack of documentation. He hasn't recently, so that means I'm doing a pretty good job there. And yeah, so we will have something there. I'm reviewing it, so it won't be something too crazy, I hope. And that's it. So you can find me on IRC, Twitter, and so on and so on. Do you have any question?
Well,
yeah.
Wait, thank the speaker first.
Yeah.
So you said you want to get more involvement from non-Erlang programmers. So what is the plan, or what is the status of Fcgi, or what other plans are there?
Yeah, I do want to.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, I will. I do want to enable many other use of Cowboy, including Fcgi, like you mentioned. So I would be very interested if people who want to try working on Cowboy, but not directly, because it's perhaps a bit scary to work on satellite projects like Fcgi, Rake for Ruby, or I don't know. So that can be a good thing. The main appeal I see is simply the feedback. Feedback is the most important, whether it's bugs or simply saying it works. It works and it does it this well. But if you want to write code, you can do Fcgi if you want. Yeah, I'm very interested because that's the next step. When Cowboy 1.0 is released, I'm pretty much done with the Erlang side of things, so I want to expand then. So if you want to start writing Fcgi, please do so. Start now, and it should be ready. It should be ready before 1.0. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
What's your target for 1.0?
You mean time? Yeah. So the question is, when what's my target for releasing 1.0? And I don't have any. I'm very, very bad with time. I generally say, I'm going to do this next, and then I go do something else. So I can't say anything. I'm sorry. But it should be already pretty stable. You can start using it if you don't already. It won't change much. Only the rest part, which is still undocumented, so that's a big stopgap if you don't really want to look at the code. Any other question? Thank you.